Council work session for Monday, April the 1st. And we have 3 items on our agenda tonight, the first being an overview of the Amazon delivery vehicles, and I'll let Mr. Fearborn take that.
Thank you, sir. The council received staff's memo regarding this particular item that was, especially back during the holidays, one of the concerns for a couple of our council members. Just want to, I think the memo kind of speaks for itself, but I wanted to highlight a couple of points within it. We took a 2-pronged approach, as we had indicated to the council that we would. I contacted, through the city manager's listserv for the state of Missouri, I contacted city managers. The results of that are actually why this report was delayed to you all, because there was such a limited response that I wanted to give them a second chance to get back with us to see if there was anybody out there who'd had a problem. We received no reports back from any of the city managers that any of them had been contacted by any of their citizenry regarding this particular issue. They actually brought up one of the things that I conclude my memo with, which is they have a lot, especially during this holiday season, with the dramatic increase in the amount of online purchases, that both USPS and UPS were also delivering this past holiday season in plain vehicles. 2 of them did report ancillary problems concerning the Amazon people in particular, in that, and they were both from smaller cities. One, that they ignore the traffic patterns and just park in the middle of the street and block the street as they run up to the house and turn their flashers on. And number 2, that one of their citizens who's a private driver for them has a marked truck, but when they're doing the transfers from the larger trucks, which bring it in from the distribution centers to the smaller cities, that they were doing that in their front yard, and the neighbors were complaining, and they were apparently, they were in kind of a code enforcement dispute relative to whether or not that could be done, because it was temporarily there while that was happening. Those were the only 2 reports from the city managers. Second part was Mr. Icky contacted Amazon themselves. As you can see from the memo, specifically, they are trying to get their entire fleet updated with signage on their vehicles. Took a picture that I had taken out my back window, obviously back when it was still snowing, of one of the new vans. Final one that I did not include, during this entire period while we were doing this, Chief indicated that she would look to see if any of the reported suspicious vehicle reports actually traced back to a delivery vehicle of any kind, and none of them did. So that concludes staff report on this item. I'd be happy to answer any questions the council would have, or if you'd want to give us any further direction on this.
Well, Jim, thank you for looking into that for us. I know that there was some concern that during the very busy holiday season that they were using a lot of different vehicles and could be subject to being misidentified as something other than Amazon or other delivery. I know they're down to the truck as prescribed or as seen in the picture here. And I've also, yesterday they were using a U-Haul vehicle when they delivered a couple of items to my residence yesterday. So I have not seen any personal vehicles being used of late. I'm sure that was a part of their plan to make sure they got appropriate times for distribution during the holiday season. But anybody else have anything? Do you have anything, Mr. Berenson?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to thank city staff for doing all the work to look into that. I know you spent a lot of time on it, and I appreciate the input. And,
it's actually our pleasure.
Okay, well, I'll take your word for that, but thanks again.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Now we'll move on to the next item, which is an overview of shoveling snow in private driveways. Mr. Fearborn, I'll let you take that one as well.
Thank you, sir. I tasked Mr. Icky with a majority of this, since he is in charge of risk management, and a large area of this seemed to apply to a risk management type of conversation, which it ended up doing. So I will turn it over to him to report out to the council.
Thank you, sir. Following the recent winter weather, council asked staff to look into the possibility of putting together a program or forming some sort of an initiative that would allow for the shoveling of snow off of private driveways. We reached out to our counterparts across the region and found really only the city of Olathe had a large program specifically directed at shoveling private drives for those over the age of 60. In that program, though, one of the things we identified were really two main hurdles that Olathe had to overcome, and that we also feel we would have to overcome as well if we were to model this program. The first was staffing. When we respond to a winter weather event, this really is an all-hands-on-deck event. We have staff from Public Works, Parks and Rec, Buildings and Grounds, and the Communications Department are all working to help respond to the winter weather in some way. Whereas in the city of Olathe, it really is contained to just their Public Works Department, which leaves their Parks and Recreation Department open to volunteering and able to go out and assist residents one-on-one. The program for the volunteer program for shoveling at Olathe is also managed by the Parks and Recreation Department. So that was one hurdle we identified. The second one, and this really is kind of more of the centerpiece of my presentation here, is by taking on a program where we would be shoveling snow off of private property and or managing a volunteer program that would do the same. We really open ourselves up to three different types of exposure when it comes, at least from the risk management side. The first side with any volunteer program is the workers' compensation exposure. Even though they do not work for the city of Raymore, nor do they receive compensation, Midwest Public Risk does say that they would be treated as part of a regular employee under our workers' compensation program if they were to be injured volunteering for this service. If we were to move forward with a program like this, we would need to adjust our workers' compensation levels to ensure that those volunteers are covered and that we have the appropriate information on all of those volunteers that would be participating in this program. The second area of exposure that we'd want to take care of is property damage. Because these would be volunteers, again, working for the city of Raymore, we would be liable for any property damage that these volunteers might cause, either to a driveway, to a home, really anything within the yard. Already, I know we cover any of the property damage that our snow plows cause when it comes to fixing some of the yards along the curbs. If a plow throws some snow that maybe damages a mailbox, those are areas that we're able to go out and fix very easily. But what this is now an added layer of we have volunteers going onto private property to shovel those driveways and sidewalks. And then finally, the third area of exposure that NPR brought to our attention was the exposure of personal injury to anyone who might be living at that residence. If we were to be going to a residence, shoveling a sidewalk, shoveling a driveway, and that resident were later to fall, they would have the ability to make a claim against the city for any injury. One thing that NPR did notice, and it was included in did provide for us, and is included in your packet, is we are allowed to put together a number of waivers. We would be able to give a waiver to our volunteers to waive any workers' compensation claim. We could give waivers to the residents to waive any liability claims or injury claims. But at the end of the day, though, no waiver is going to be foolproof. We may not be fully covered even though that resident or that volunteer has signed that waiver, and so there still would be some risk associated. So once we're able to identify the hurdle of staffing as well as to identify the other area of liability, kind of the final area that I wanted to point out is also one of the reasons Olathe really pushes forward with this is it is part of their city code that residents have to clear the sidewalks and fronts of the driveway in order to make areas passable. So it is a requirement by their city code that these areas be cleared, whereas we currently do not have that requirement, which is really what pushes the impetus for that volunteer program. If the council wanted to pursue a similar program or pursue a program that would shovel driveways or shovel private drives, our recommendation from staff is that, one, we shift the liability to a private contractor, and two, that we don't use staff or necessarily use volunteers, but rather find a way to have a paid contractor do those services. One of the ideas that we at staff had kind of pulled together and run through Midwest Public Risk was the idea of using the foundation. We would be able to collect donations through the foundation throughout the year, And then during the fall, we would take applications from residents, and if we had enough donations throughout the year, we'd be able to identify those residents who applied that we could then pay for the removal of snow from a driveway. But again, that would all depend upon the amount of donations we received through that program. It shifts the liability and doesn't require us to use any staffing time. That would also be another hurdle. That really is kind of the conclusion. Midwest Public Risk was gracious enough. They also provided not only their initial take on the program, but also had a larger overview. It's about 4 pages that talks about minimizing the risks of volunteers. It's a really great read to kind of go through and look at what we really need to be covering ourselves for, what we need to be anticipating as we have volunteers throughout the city. But then also, this checklist is fantastic at the end when it comes to the volunteer selection guide. Even as if we were to move forward with a volunteer group, these would be some of the items that we would need to build into an application process just on the volunteer side. So a lot of great information from Midwest Public Risk, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about that report.
Anyone have anything? Do you have something, Mr. Townsend?
Just a quick question on for the debate. Contracting side of it, would it be if this would be put out for recommendation to go that path, I'm not saying it would it be a request for qualifications, request for proposals through the city to contract, or if they would be recommended to use that person?
We would put out a request for proposal.
Okay, so it would go through the traditional contracting process, but it's
Lowest,
still,
best, most responsible bidder.
so the city would, through that donation arm, fund it based on donations received, and that would cover how much driveways you could cover. So that answered that question. And last question, our demographics of the 60 and older community, that's could be substantial. So would it be not everyone within that population group is unable to shovel? So is there some sort of determination of who would be eligible and not eligible based on need or abilities?
We currently operate a hardship list for our residential trash service. And to qualify for that, there's a number of things, an application as well as a sign-off from a doctor, especially if there is a disability preventing someone from being able to move their trash carts to the curb. We most likely would be using the same qualifications that we do for that program.
So there's a system in place to try to at least qualify those who are able to meet that criteria.
Correct.
For this program. Okay.
And individuals with disabilities as well
Yes.
are on that list, not just with an age restriction. So it would be, as Mike indicated, it would be, Mystique indicated, it would be a combination of the two, and first come, first served basis.
So we'd be able to kind of pare that list down of eligible individuals and households.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Barber.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Mr. Eakey for all of his hard work. And we used to have a saying in business that the lawyers are really the ones in charge. And I knew that was going to take the fun out of it. No offense, Mr. Zer, but trying to get this thing to pass through legal was going to be difficult. Mr. Serco is the one that had helped somebody in the city, and then I was the one that found the Olathe program. I understand we haven't had really any bad snow events for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and then all of a sudden we've had this horrific one. My recommendation was is we've got this information, we know there's something that could be done, it's just how deep we'd want to get into it. I wouldn't want to let 1 year dictate, the next 10 years for us. So my suggestion would be we're kind of on notice. We had a bad year. If we're starting to see that kind of pile up, then I think it's something we really need to focus on. And and the foundation, maybe I like that idea too. The way the presentation started, I thought, nah, I don't want to touch this at all. But then ending with having a private contractor and run it through the foundation, I think makes some sense. But again, I hate to jump into something just because we had one bad year. So that's my recommendation.
Mr. Serco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, again, kind of kick off with Kevin, but I like the format that you reached out. At least we have something to look at. we could always set the demographics, 5-inch, 6-inch snowfall, and who knows what we have in the past, but at least to work on this idea like you have with the private, maybe get money and help more donations, other outfits, organizations within the city could help do fundraisers, just bring money into that. The city would probably, like I said, set up to have the list of who's who, but they would not have any responsibility, because if this was going to take place down the road, again, it would be a private contractor with work comp liability for everything. He'd be fully covered, his people, what they do. So that would alleviate any responsibility to the city. They would just be the ones who would have the name base. Here's the people, here's the list. And that's what they would go off of. But then it would also fall back to how much finances and funding we have in any given year for that we have added on to that without touching into any more of the money elsewhere and using too much of the money, exhausting it out for that purpose. But at least to start with this idea, I think is good. I know we have a number of elderly and different people here, and well, hopefully we don't get these snow breaks, but you know, we in the past have had some lot of snows. We've been pretty lucky lately to this last year, but at least we can start looking at it. Just an idea, something to play with. It's kind of, like I said, you came out with a lot of good ideas. I think the private contractor, we can somehow generate funds into that. If we ever went that route and have the private contractors and get bids. We have a number of them out here. I know a number of snow removals, Harrisville, Kansas City, Belton, Raymore. There's a number of people who do it, so we could probably get a fairly cheap bid, and they would be fully insured and have to show a certificate of insurance to the city and have it updated where we can check at any given time to any insurance company of anyone who's handing out a certificate. But I like the idea, we at least talking about it, at least somebody already have an idea that, hey, we're concerned and we're moving forward on a project like that. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Dilgwad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like the idea of the foundation doing this under that umbrella of the foundation as well. My one recommendation and kind of question also is, would there be a way that the city could facilitate just neighborly action from the neighbors before we took the step to pay someone to do it? I mean, I know in our neighborhood, we just kind of take care of our neighbors who need that kind of help. And if there's a situation maybe where neighbors don't realize someone needs help and it's the middle of winter and, you know, it's a hard time to get out, somebody new moved in or whatever, hard time to get out to meet your neighbors, would there be a way that the city could try to facilitate that neighborly action with some of the neighbors before we took this next step?
I think we could put out the communication, be sure, and we've done it on other items before, bitter, cold, et cetera. Check on your neighbors, help your neighbors, let's all be good neighbors. We could put a program together like that. Don't you think, Mike?
No, absolutely.
Good answer. Since I just laid the whole thing on you. But those actually work. You all may remember a similar kind of a reverse situation existed in Lawrence, Kansas a few years ago when we had the really heavy snow where we were having trouble even getting salt. And in Lawrence, Kansas, just like Olathe, it's a requirement that your sidewalks be shoveled, and there was almost a citizen uprising to get that removed from code. The city's response to that was to put out a huge push to the college students that were there and to everybody else and to all the neighbors, be a good neighbor and go shovel the sidewalk in front of your neighbor's house. A further concern that we have too, the amount of firms that can do this kind of work are actually not as numerous as you think. A lot of them can plow parking lots, but what you're talking about here is having to get out of a truck and if we do a driveway and they come in and they pull it, they got to be able to put it someplace because they can't put it in the street because that's against code. So that pickup truck's going to be trying to get snow into a front yard. You will see more damage, wouldn't be on us, but then they also need to get out and get the front stoop. And most of them don't get out and hand shovel. So may revert it back to a volunteer type situation or a good neighbor type situation. And I think in the year where we see whether or not this is an anomaly, and I thank you, council member, for bringing that up, because when I get to my budget presentation on the snow issue to you all, I'm going to be quoting some of that already. If we see if this was an anomaly year, next year would be a very good year to do the good neighbor thing. And if it looks like we're developing into a pattern, then we could step it up from there. I think it's a great idea.
Mr. Holman?
Thank you, sir. One would have to be pretty cold-hearted just to say no and speak against this, certainly. It has great appeal, but as Councilmember Moorhead used to say, I'm going to be the devil's advocate on the other side of the coin. One thing I could see is a possibility of happening, and Ms. Lewis is about to tell us about the aging of our population, especially with the baby boomer group coming of age and them being the biggest group here in town. Our elderly population is going to grow. I'm afraid that what we might see is if we were able to get this off the ground via the foundation, and we have a couple of those or a number of those mild and moderate winters where we're able to afford this, then we have the big year snow event, and halfway through we can't provide this service anymore because we don't have any more money in the foundation. Now it has become an expected benefit of those people within the city. Hey, somebody was supposed to come and shovel my drive and they don't do that anymore. I was dependent upon this, and we made them dependent upon this. I'm not against anything that was said. I just wanted to bring that up. It is a possibility. It's just food for thought.
Okay. Mr. Berenson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilman Holman, and I also like what Councilman Abdelgawad said. I'll add one thing to that. We do have a lot of good local churches in town, and I think it would be a good idea to try to involve the neighborhoods and possibly see if we can get some church involvement in there too. That's just my 2 cents on it. Thank you.
Yep. Yes, Mr. Byrd. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be remiss if I didn't say we do have lots of Boy Scouts in town and other Girl Scouts and all the students that like to get A+ volunteer hours. We have a lot of through churches as well and other organizations. We could maybe put a huge army together, but it would be a huge undertaking.
Yep. Ms. Abdelgawad.
Just a quick question. Could the foundation organize volunteers under a different umbrella than the city without the same liability?
It would be the same liability exposure. It would just, rather than be the city, it'd be the foundations. But since the foundation is part of the city, that it would just kind of revert back.
Anyone else? Well, thanks again for looking into that, Mike. Great information. We'll move on to the next item, which is the Aging Mastery Program. We have with us tonight Monique Lewis, and she had started to present this at a council meeting, first council meeting in March, I think, and so we'll turn it over to you now to finish that presentation without a lot of time restrictions to it. So we'll turn it over to you.
Stop me if you need to do other business.
That's why you're last on our 3-item agenda tonight. That's right.
But before I start, I want to thank all of you. I believe there are some council people that I do not know or have never seen. The gentleman at the end of the road at the table there. I want to thank you all for being a part of this council. I know it takes a lot of time. Having been a council member myself, it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of hours to make this council work well together. And I know that the pages that you read are numerous, but still it works well. And I wish to congratulate the staff especially, that they are going forward and that everything runs well in this city. And coming back to the snow removal, I just want to give this word out. One of my neighbors is a young man of about 25, 26. And the other day when we had a lot of snow and I opened my garage door, I needed to go out, my garage was open and there was no snow. And I didn't even ask. It may have been my son who called him to come and do that because he wasn't very well and he knew he wouldn't be able to shovel all that snow. But there are some people who are willing to do that, just to give you a little bit of heads up. You know, I believe that there are, just like I've had young people come by, and this is for the scouts there, they come by and ask if they can mow my lawn, because they know that, you know, there is an elderly person there and maybe we need to help her. So that, I wanted to give you my 2 cents. The Aging Mastery Program actually comes out of the Council of Aging. There was some bright man who looked around and decided that, hey, all these people have got extra days to live, and once they retire, what are they doing with that? And actually, I wish to give you two little numbers. In 1950, when a person was 65 years old, she or he had 14 years to live. Out of those 14 extra years, most likely 50% of those years were not in very good health. So those are some things that we need to think about. People who are now turning 65 have got 19 years more to live. So if we add 65 and 19, that means 84, unless my math is not right anymore. But so there are a lot of days that you retire. What are you going to do? Now, I know that everybody thinks, well, I'm going to travel. Well, I have a hobby. Well, I'm going to help. You know, and there's a very nuance there that people really don't commit. And I know that when I retire, that's the way that I asked to be on the Parks and Rec, because I realized that I had enough time to be able to help out and to get our Parks and Rec really on a good basis. And I have to say that I am very proud of the Parks and Rec, even though I am not intimately involved with them anymore. So it's also a thank you to the staff and the council members and the mayor. You are part of the council. So we believe that if older adults spent a bit more time each day taking care of themselves, it would lead to a higher level of physical and emotional well-being, increased civic engagement, and stronger social connectedness. This class is actually 10 weeks long. And we, here in Raymore, we did one of those classes. Out of the 18 that registered, and we had hoped to have 25, but we only had 18 registered, 14 graduated, which I think is a pretty good number, considering that we did it on a Tuesday morning so that it would not interfere with evening activities if somebody, and we did it at Centerview. I had a co-facilitator, Karen Borst, and she was excellent at this. She really was very, very good at taking care of everybody that came to the meetings, to the classes. The classes are usually about an hour and a half, which is not too long. People, you know, if you go past an hour and a half, you get kind of these glazed looks that they don't want to listen anymore. So you have to be careful about that. But we did have, and when the program was over, we made a graduation class, and I'm going to send this around because what we asked is for everybody to give an opinion as to what they thought of the class. That's one thing that I want to send around. I'm also going to send around these papers so that if you can't listen to me, you'll have at least an idea of what this is all about. And I made 15 copies, so I hope that there is enough. But if there is not, and if you guys want to have copies, I'll gladly leave one here and ask the clerk to make copies for you. What exactly is the Aging Mastery Program? Well, everybody knows what aging is. You know, you look around you and you see people who were maybe 60 years old, and then you see them 10 years later, and they have got a little bit more gray, and they walk a little bit less easily, and their voice quavers. And by the way, I had a mini stroke 6 months ago. I'm getting back to everything, but my memory is still rather bad. So if you see me hesitant about the words that I have to use, that's the reason. And actually, I was in the hospital at the time that I had the mini stroke. So, you know, if you have to have it, be in the hospital. I was in the hospital for a heart problem, but I was very grateful. And by the way, the hospital I was in, but I'm not trying to make you feel good about this. It was Belton Hospital, and then they transferred me to research because they could not do everything here. So I was in research. The only thing that I did not like was I couldn't open the window, and I like fresh air, and the food was not to the best. But I think everybody, you know, when you're sick, most food doesn't taste very good anyway. Okay, so first of all, classes and programs in the Aging Mastery series align with the overarching goal of helping people enjoy meaningful and good lives. You know, when I retired, I looked around and I said, okay, what am I going to do? I've got all these hours. Yes, I like to travel, but you can't do that all the time, and you don't have the finances for all of it. And so one guy came by, and I then decided I would still work as a physical therapist and for a private company. And he said, why don't you come to the nursing home and help us out? We need you. Well, I thought, okay, I'm aging. I may as well go to the nursing home and find out what they do. So it was very instructive to me. But this program is for people who want to stay in their home, who still can manage a lot of things, who are not dependent upon other people. And I will go through the classes, you will understand why, so that you better understand the program. So, second, this program has started because all the content and the realities of aging, both the challenges and opportunities we find when we grow older. You know, 20 years ago, I was in fine shape. But now I have difficulty getting out of the chair. I have difficulty walking, and I get out of breath if I go up the stairs. I did not think that that would ever happen to me, quite honestly. I thought I was invincible, you know, I was doing good. So this program, I feel, should be presented to people who are near retirement, but before they retire. Now, the Council of Aging out of Washington wants us to present this program to the people 60 and older. That means 5 years before they retire. Or some people, I feel, want to retire at 55, and it would be a real good idea if they had this program. And you will realize why once I get into the classes. I want to tell you about the classes so that you can understand the program better. And Mr. Mayor, we now have Centerview. When I joined the Parks and Recreation Board, we didn't have Centerview. And I think it's wonderful. Our parks, and you know, not only that, but we have the RAC. And so I am 100% behind anything that is spent on Parks and Recreation. You probably realize that. Okay, third, the classes all emphasize the concept of mastery. And what exactly is mastery? That was a strange word to me. Mastery means taking learning and turning it into behavior. Getting to mastery means using the 4 distinguishing features of the Aging Mastery program. The concept of daily practice, and daily practice as described in more detail below. So I gave you a copy, but you can listen to me first. There are 10 classes. The first class is introducing people to why they are now having more time to spend on activities, on hobbies that they have, on traveling, and on their family. And they should be grateful for these extra hours that they have. It was not until I took this class that I decided, okay, am I really grateful for having these extra days? You know, now I'm 86, and so I decided to retire when I was 70. And so I've had all these years, and I've done what I feel a lot of good things. And I want people to enjoy their extra years that they have. But you can only enjoy them if you are in good health and if you know what aging is about. And it is difficult to understand sometimes. Everybody says, well, I'm aging. And what does it mean? Like I said, I can't walk as far as I could. I can't breathe as well. I have medications on my bathroom that stand next to one another, and I think, oh, this is horrible. I was never one for pharmacology, but I think it's necessary. I worked with a lot of aged people. I'm a physical therapist. I worked in private, and I worked specifically in hospital. That is where I really put my emphasis. And so I have met a lot of aged people that if they had had more information, they would be better prepared for aging. So the first class we give is to explain a little bit what the whole program is about. The second class that we give, and usually it's once a week, so that, because what happens is that we ask people to every day do a little bit more, decide what they haven't done so far, but now I want them to pay attention to, and each class is geared towards teaching people a little bit about the aging process. So the first is exercise and you. We, we have 4 different areas that we need to look at. We need to look at the heart problems and the breathing. We need to look at balance when you're walking or when you're sitting or going from left to right. We need to look at flexibility, and we need to look at strengthening. So I give a little class, and I have an instructor who comes and gives a half-an-hour class, and I touch on all these different areas, and I give them a specific exercise program. We also were given by the Council of Aging, along with this program, there is this on paper and there is this on disc. So we give this to everybody so that they can look at it, and it explains a little bit about all sorts of exercises. And I go over most of that because it is nicely presented. And you can put it on the disc and put the disc in your computer if you have one. And I know that not all people have a computer, and not all people are computer literate. Me. The next one is sleep. I don't know if you have heard your parents say, oh, I don't sleep as well. I know that I don't. I used to go to bed, fall asleep, wake up when the alarm clock went off, and I had my busy day. But now I find it very difficult to go off to sleep and to stay asleep. So we asked an RN who is interested in sleep problems from Belton to come and give an hour or 45 minutes what people can do in order to be able to sleep better. And I think it has been very helpful, certainly to me. You know, one of the things I did was look at my computer before I went to bed. Well, that's a bad idea. You need to relax before you go to bed. You need to just sit there and do a little bit of meditation and prepare yourself for sleep. And that's what I did not do. Healthy eating and hydration. I had an expert on that come in, and I've only got one left, but I'm sure that you can maybe see it. She gave us this little plate, and this little plate contains fruits, vegetables, protein, and grains. And I asked her, because I know that many people ask me, well, when I buy something, how do I know it's good for me? So these 4 parts of nutrition are very important. She also talked about reading when you buy reading what is in the bottle, or reading everything. And sometimes it's very difficult to, and I've lost my word, it's very difficult to read the labels. You know, you read the labels and it says percentage of vitamin, percentage of this, percentage of that, and you really wonder what all that means. So she went over that with us, and her main thing was, okay, you have fruit as part of your plate, you have vegetables as part of your plate, you have protein, and you have grain. And then on the other side, she has dairy. And what is not on here is hydration. You have to keep yourself hydrated. water, water, water. But if you have soup, there's fluid in there. There's a lot, have fruit, there is a lot of fluid in there. So you have to be careful about what you eat and what you take in, and let it be very useful to your body and to keep you in shape. She was very good, by the way. Then we have a class on financial fitness. And financial fitness is a review of strategies for remaining economically secure in an area of longevity. I went to a program when I was about 50 that was given by Truman Medical Center, where I worked, to all the directors about financial planning. And I was very grateful for that, because I lived with my 3 children, and so I did not know how I was going to be able to put away a retirement nest egg. And who did I have to see, and how can I get advice? So this gentleman came in, and he was from Edward Jones. He was very, very young, so I don't think he was quite geared to the aging population. But it did give us an idea of how to get a retirement, what to do, how to save, and how to spend your retirement nest egg. Because everybody that I talk to, will I have enough money to live on this until it goes out? And you know, you have to plan. You have to decide, this is how much I need, this is how much I'm going to spend, this is how much I'm going to go on vacation, this is how much I will spend on clothes, on food. You know, I'm not a very good cook, so I like to go to the restaurant. But that costs. So I'm very judicious in where I go to eat and what I buy. And you could always ask for a doggy bag, because the plates that they give to you in the restaurants are so big and so full, at least for me, that I throw away half of it if I didn't take it home. So that is something that I really recommend that you look into that. And setting financial goals, I think sometimes that's very difficult. I hope that all the couples that now retire will look at their finances and will set some goals and will decide and have somebody who will help them. I went to a financial planner, and I'm still with her. It's been about 20 years. And she told me an awful lot about what I have to do, the goals, budgeting. And some people do not know very well how to budget. And they don't know very well how to stay away from the credit cards. So then you accumulate a lot of debt. And that is really a no-no when you don't have a job anymore, because you're living off of either Social Security and your retirement benefits, and you have to set some goals. If you have children, you have to tell them, this is how much I have, and so that they don't come out with their hands all the time, you know, wanting to be helped. I know that happens to a lot of people. It happened to me, and I had to tell them. I said, no, I can't give any more. I need to live, and I need to enjoy my life. And they agreed, you know. They said, yes, Mom. Okay, so medication management. As I have said, I have all these little bottles in front of me in the bathroom. But I don't think everybody knows what kind of medication is for what. You know, I have one for blood thinner. I have one for making my heart go right. I have one for strengthening. There's a whole gob. So and we tell people, when you go to the doctor, make a list of your medication and ask them, what is this medication for? Because one day they'll feel like not taking it, and it may be very bad for them, even though they know that the doctor wants them to take it. So that's a very important. We also had, as guest, we had a pharmacist come from Belton and explain to the people who were present exactly, and how to throw away medication, how long medication lasts, and things like that. The next one is advanced planning, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, because I had a person come in from the Bioethics Center, the Bioethics Center here in Kansas City. She was excellent, excellent. And it is a part of our program that is sometimes very difficult for the aged population to talk about. Nobody really wants to tell their daughter, you know, when I'm sick, you have to answer. If I'm in a coma, you have to make the decisions. Or will you make the decisions? I don't have a husband anymore, and so I had to look towards my children to help. And it was actually my daughter, 6 years ago, when I had a little mishap and was in ICU, she said, "Mother, I don't know what to answer to these doctors. What do you want? How do you want things taken care of? Which nursing home, if you want to go? Do you want to stay at home? How do we do that?" And so she was very astute. She is, of course, a social worker. So she has some background in all that, I'm sure, with dealing with a lot of her people. So it's very necessary. And this person, her name is Lisa Ward, and she was excellent, absolutely excellent. I don't have the book because I lent it out. She gave us a book, and you can get it. If you want to have it, you can call the Bioethics Committee and ask for Lisa Ward, and she will. There's a book, and it's full. It's about 10 chapters, not very long, but each chapter contains the history of what an elderly person did to prepare herself for passing away and to prepare her family for passing away. Some elderly do not want to talk to their children about passing away. And, you know, some people just think death is awful. Death is just part of living. You know, we're born, we live, we die. And some people are comfortable with that, but many people are not. I am comfortable with it, but I had a very good parents who, in fact, my father, when he was very sick and my mother had died, told me quite honestly, he was in Europe still, "Oh, I'm coming to live with you." And that was all there was to it. So I had to find a geriatrician, I had to find a cancer person, I had to find all sorts of things, but financially, he was well prepared. And, you know, every month he gave me part of his retirement and said, "This is to pay for me being here." I said, "Daddy, you don't have to give." "No." "Who's going to inherit it?" "You, so you may as well take it." So you see, it's necessary to talk to your family. And I think I have 3 children, and all 3 of them, I have talked to them, I have given them my instructions, and they know what to look for. And there is one page here, I should have made a copy of it, because it is a copy, and maybe I could send it round after I have read it. Try to become familiar with the language of advanced planning. Healthcare advanced directives. Who is going to answer the doctor for you when you are in a coma in the hospital? You have to have a living will, is one thing. You have to have medical power of attorney. The lawyers will tell you also that you have to have a power of attorney for your finances. It does not need to be the same person. In my case, I asked my daughter to take care of the medical power of attorney and my oldest son to take care of my trust. So you have to also know what DNR means. DNR is do not resuscitate. And, you know, if I'm in a coma and it doesn't work and all that the doctors have tried don't work anymore, I don't want to be resuscitated. I want to die just very nice and easily. I also wish to have organ and tissue donation. These are all things that you need to talk to the person who is going to take care of you. Then you need to know what physicians' orders for life-sustaining treatment. So you need to talk to your doctor, to your medical doctor, who takes care of you on a daily basis. So I'm going to get, and if you wish to have a copy, I will come tomorrow and make a copy and leave it in your boxes. So this person was an absolute doll. She really explained things very nicely, and I think it was very useful to most of our people. The next class we had was Healthy Relationships, exploring the benefits of being socially active as well as the risks of isolation. You know, when you don't go to work anymore and you're not active in whatever is going on in your city, you're inside. You sit inside, you look at the boob tube, and maybe you'll have people come and say hello to you, and maybe you don't. So, you know, it is necessary to have relationships, and I found that out. I had a very dear friend of mine who died 3 years ago, and that whole first year after she died, I kept on looking for her. I did not have anybody with whom I could talk about, my son does this and I don't like it. Somebody said this to me and I'm upset. You know, there's all little things that can really bother you, and you'd like to be able to discuss it with somebody, but you don't have a person that you trust who will be able to give you a nice answer, or an answer that is relevant to what you feel is wrong. So we did have, out of the 10 classes that we had, 4 of them Karen and I did, but the other 6, we had experts who came in to talk to people. And that is really, the people really like that. And I don't know if I've said this, out of the 18 people that registered, 14 graduated. And I was pretty proud of that. That was pretty good. The next thing that we talk about is falls prevention. And I have loads of paper regarding falls prevention. So, you know, it is my babe. And I talk to people and I said, you know, look in your, and this is also in this class, look inside your house. Do you have good lighting? Do you have steps outside? Can you see the steps? Do you have good lighting? Or do you put a yellow tape so that people can see? Inside your house, do you have electrical cords that are all over the place that you could trip on? Do you have little carpets that could slide, and the next thing you know, you're on the floor? So it is important that they think about that. And that the falls prevention, I put it with exercise, because quite honestly, if you're not stable when you stand and you try to walk, you fall very easily. And if you don't have a lot of strength, you fall very easily. And I have seen numerous people come in regarding that, so that they would at least be able to get back their strength, get back their flexibility, and use an assistive device. A cane, a walker, it's just an assistive device. And you know, some people say, I don't want to use a walker. I don't want to use a cane. How are they going to get around? The next thing you know, they're on a chair and they don't get up anymore. They don't go to the kitchen. They don't go to the dining room. They don't go to bed. It's difficult for them to shower. I mean, that is one of the things that is basic to everybody. You want to shower. You want to be clean. And so that is really a difficulty for fall. And then our last lecture here was about community engagement. And we really tried to, I don't think this side has.
I didn't know if you want us to pass them out or not.
Pardon?
We made copies.
Oh, I don't need those.
Okay.
That's for you, because I can make copies at the Parks and Rec whenever I want something. Or I can even ask your city clerk. So, yeah, I would like to put that back in the notebook. Thank you. But I thought it was a good, I don't know how many, probably all of you are aware of all these things, but maybe you are not. That is all I wanted to say, except that I have just 2 or 3 more things to say. This program comes out of, as I said, the Council of Aging located in Washington, D.C. It has been bought by, the licensing for this program has been bought by Mark. And that allows us to buy and to have all the material, because there is this program here, there is a full program that we give to each person who comes and listens to us, okay? And in reality, all the material that we give out is worth about $300. But I believe that Mark bought 10 licenses, $3,000, but since we share often, all the centers are allowed to bring this program, and we are allowed then to buy and donate. We can't donate everywhere, but I will say that here in Raymore, some reason, I'm not quite sure why, we had a wonderful person that got the money, and we did not ask for a registration. The Healthcare Foundation of Greater Kansas City gave us the money for having 25 people attend the class. So we did not have to ask a registration fee, which was great. I mean, and so, are there any questions? Have I been clear?
Perfectly, I believe. Very clear. Reg?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to say thank you, Mrs. Lewis. It's very informative, and your passion clearly shows for this program. And I just had, you didn't mention the fees. I was curious on the schedule. How often do you put the program on?
Well, we tried to put the program on again, because last year we gave it starting the last Tuesday of March, and it continued until the first Tuesday of June. That's 10 weeks, with 1 week taken out because of the voting day. And it was the same day as we were going to give it. So we could not use Centerview, so we, because everybody goes and votes there, or most people do anyway. But we did advertise it. We advertised it in the Parks and Recreation Review. We had a person that went to Foxwood Springs and talked to all the people there. We advertised it, tell me, in 1 or 2 newspapers, I believe.
We had it in one of the newspapers. We did 2 email blasts and included it in the weekly reports.
Okay, okay. And for some reason, we didn't have enough people. We only had 6 people registered. And because only 6 came, we felt that we should not do the program. We should do the program maybe later, but to ask all these expert people to come in and talk for an hour and a half to only 6 people, we felt that was not appropriate. So I need to get with my facilitator. I was away this month, and I need to get with the facilitator and ask if she would like to do it again. She was the one who was really very enthusiastic about doing it. And so I really do feel that it is appropriate. Now, the Council of Aging wants us to present it to only people 60 and over. We can present it to the people 50 and over, but then they would have to pay for all the supplies. And quite honestly, I'm not sure that people will pay $300 for all the supplies, unless we can find another foundation who is willing to give us money. So, does that answer your question?
It does. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I thank you very much. Are there any questions?
A couple more.
I wanted to thank you for coming to talk to us. As I was listening to you, my sister is approaching 50, and she has epilepsy, and she has a tremendous amount of falls. But then my father and mother end up spending a lot of their time being caregivers for her.
Absolutely.
And they're approaching the age where they're going to have trouble doing that.
Right.
And so this is something definitely that's in, whether you're in an aging situation yourself, you'll have parents that need this information as well, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Has your family found a healthcare planning that will come and help them?
She has a
There-
caregiver that comes.
Okay, okay, that's good. That's good.
Just
By the
something-
way, this comes out of Mark, and the Aging Services, which is led by Dr. James Stowe, is excellent referral. And for those who know a lot about Mark, last year, we graduated 400 and some people from this program. And remember that Mark covers the 5 counties in Missouri and 4 counties in Kansas. And there are we don't have a senior center here, and I don't know if we ever will. It is something that you need to think about, because we have Centerview, and we could use that for a program for seniors who would like to have some relationships and extra social activity. I know that the Parks and Rec do have activities for the older. There is one person who is now teaching bridge to some people, and we have classes for yoga and fitness. So that is all there, but we don't have I don't know whether it really would fly here in Raymore. I think people are quite independent here in Raymore, and we may find that necessary in a few years' time. I don't know, but I was disappointed that we could not give the program, but I will ask to give it again, or to try to give it again, because I think it's a very useful program.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't be discouraged. We have a very popular program in the Civilian Police Academy downstairs, and sometimes we don't fill it to the point that we can carry on with it. But we reschedule it, and we generally have enough applicants that go through. So it's kind of a cycle thing.
I think so too. And I think that I was talking with Katie, who did all the electronics for our program. I mean, Centerview is wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful for presenting a program like this. With all the electronics that we have and the help that we can give, it really is a wonderful place. And but I need to find out if my co-facilitator would like to do it again.
Anyone else have anything? Mr. Serco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Monique, you made some valuable points here. I think what I would like to say, I might be just a couple years older than most people here on the council, just a couple. And, I think people even younger don't understand something that I deal with my sister, who passed away a year ago, but for 2 years I was her full power of attorney. Your spouse, people's spouses, sometimes something happens to you at 35, 40, they do not and cannot take that responsibility. If you don't have an advance directive and someone who can pull the plug or do what sometimes the spouse just can't do it. And they're in a situation that they don't know what to do, they didn't have it, and all of a sudden they're looking to the spouse. The spouse cannot make that decision. So I tell people even younger, sit with your wife, your husband, whoever, and your kids. If one of the spouses said, I can't handle that, then find one of your children who can and create one. Because you never know when somebody's going to have a situation, a car accident, and all of a sudden, and within days, they're on a machine, and no one has and the hospital's going to ask you, who's going to be responsible?
I know.
And people don't want that responsibility.
No.
So, I mean, it's a good point, but I think it goes to younger people, because it can happen. But thank you for some of the stuff you said, because it is important.
It is very important for the aged person. She or he needs to be comfortable with going forth into the part of life which becomes very difficult at times. And children are not always able to do it either. You really have to sit down with them and talk to them. And there are ways, the Bioethics Committee has wonderful information that we can share, but I didn't bring any along. I don't have any. I would call them if you wanted to see more.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Monique. We really appreciate the presentation tonight.
Good.
Very good. I'm glad we had a little bit more time for you to be able to get into a little bit more of it in depth.
I was hoping to give it before when I was here, because I thought, okay, people will see me and will hear about the program. So I was hoping to have more people, because I know that our council meetings are televised.
Sure.
But that didn't happen, and that's okay, you know.
You'll be pleased to know that we now televise the work sessions as well, so this was televised.
I just heard.
Yeah.
That's what I just heard. James, oh, by the way, I have to tell you, we had a graduation party for all these people, and Jim Cataract came and did a little spiel on his part of working here in Kansas City. And then Nathan Mustine, the director of Parks and Rec, also gave a little spiel. And then everybody was given various things, you know, a little graduation thing, a little pin, and 2 or 3 other things that they were given, so that it made them feel good.
Well, thank you very much. It was great seeing you again, too. Do we have anything else on the agenda?
No further business, sir.
Okay, well, then we'll stand adjourned. Yeah, oh, Mr. Holman.
It's certainly completely your decision, your prerogative, but we did have the Boy Scouts set through an entire session of a work session for an hour. I know from the younger member standpoint, a lot of this probably seems very foreign and alien to them. I thought if you're willing and the council's willing, maybe have one of the leaders just come up and talk about what the purpose of their visit was tonight, and see if they have any questions of us as a group before we dismiss for the evening.
Well, they were actually here. Mr. Berg drug them in here. So for a meeting, a pre-meeting, so.
So they've already set this up then, okay.
Yeah, so anyway, I don't know if you wanted to expand upon that at all, Mr. Berg.
Basically, this troop's out of Belton, and they had trouble getting anyone from Belton to get back with them. So one of the leaders, I was his son's den leader for 5 years, and another one of the boys that's here, I was his leader as well. And so we came, and they had a lot of questions about sewers, and they're working on citizenship and the community merit badge. And I think I have 2 scouts in my home that have yet to finish that. I don't know why they haven't figured out how to find the council meeting yet, but anyway, but that's what.
I appreciate that. I didn't realize that something had been done in advance. I just wanted to make sure that we took care of it.
Sure, absolutely.
No. Yes, thank you guys for being present.
I just want to share
privileged.
One other thing. Lori Bassett from the newspaper approached Mr. Berenson and I a couple weeks ago about an ad that Mr. Moorhead used to do in conjunction with the animal shelter, and wondered if any other council members would be interested in picking that up, or if we would be interested in sharing it as a group. So I'll send an email with the details, but I just wanted to kind of put a bug in your ear and say, keep an eye out for that.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.